All right, everybody, welcome to Virtual Bourbon. My name is Steve Akeley. We have one of our classic, our flagship whiskey events tonight. And I always like to say that this has become our flagship virtual bourbon event. These are, just been so well received. And for example, this event is sold out. The next one that we're doing in March is sold out. And we just put up the one for May, and we've got about a third of the tickets sold in just the first day. So I really appreciate everyone's support of this. They're a lot of fun. It's a great way to learn about some great companies, and we also get to drink some really great whiskey. So that always works out well. I'd like to just do a quick little around the horn in introduction to all of our guests that are going to be here. And then we'll be going through them, of course, one by one to learn about their signature or their flagship whiskey. But I do want an opportunity for all of them to say hi just here as we kick this off. So we've got Dave and David Woods from Wiggly Bridge. How are you guys doing?
Very good. How are you?
Very good. We have Lisa Wicker from Widow Jane. Lisa, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great as always. We got Paul Hiletko from Few Spirits. Paul, how are you?
Hey, doing great. Thank you to be here, Steve.
Absolutely. And finally, Ryan Thompson from 10th Mountain. Ryan, how you doing, man?
Hello, from Vail, Colorado.
Vail, Colorado. Nice. Great place to be. Fun time of the year for you. So glad you took some time away from, glad you took some time away from the slopes to hang out with us tonight. So
yes, sir.
Appreciate that. All right. Well, we're going to be drinking in that order. So it's the same order that your placemat follows. So if you want to maybe take a pour of our first one from Wiggly Bridge, sometimes we like to pour it and then we'll talk to them just a little bit before we go through the tasting, but you can get that going, just kind of get some air to it. And we'll speak to Dave and David here. So guys, how's it going?
Quite well. It's winter time in Maine.
Yeah. Yes.
So, the snow has treated us quite well.
Mm-hmm.
Today was 40 degrees, so it's pretty brown outside. But we're going to be getting some storms another couple of weeks by the looks of things.
Yep. Well, another 7 months of winter and you'll be into spring.
Yeah.
So I first question I've got for you guys, tell me a little bit about the name Wiggly Bridge. Where does that come from?
It's a small pedestrian suspension bridge in our town. Connects like an island called Stedman Woods. It's really, as a kid, just running over it was always like, yeah, we're here. We get to jump on the Wiggly Bridge. So it just is like a small in stature, but it has like that great feel. But it was what we always call the shower moments, where you're just like, it pops into your head. And my dad was in the shower, obviously. And that's where he used to go drinking as a kid. So he was like, oh, Wiggly Bridge, wiggle on your walk. It just had a good feel to it. And it just won.
Mm-hmm. And how do you guys decide to get into the whiskey business? How do you decide to open a distillery?
Started as like one of those jokes at the family dinner table. And then it was like that double take, like, wait, we should really try this. So we kind of dabbled in a place where he vacations and started liking what we were making and went to an ADI conference, and it was all uphill or downhill, whichever perspective you look at from there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm a real definition of an entrepreneurial crazy man. I've never had an employer in my life, and we currently have 7 companies that we've started in our family business.
Wow.
Children all manage different entities.
Yeah.
And the distillery is actually for my grandchildren. When we did the founding documents, it can never be sold. It has to be operated by somebody from my direct lineage. And if that's not possible, wholesale off the juice and lock the front door. No trust fund kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and 7 businesses, and you're not from the distilling business. So once you decide, you're bit by the bug to do this, how do you learn? Because there's so much to learn. I mean, you got to learn about all the equipment and the science of making the stuff. You have to then come up with recipes and all that kind of stuff. Tell us a little bit about that part of the story. Did they freeze up? I think they did. They did. We may come back to them. Looks like they're stuck, and it may take a while. You don't know. So Lisa, let's talk to you. How does that sound? We'll come back to them.
Disgraceful. It's not me freezing up.
Hey, I'm happy it's not me. So if that happens, Justine Mays is supposed to take this over. So I better officially make her the backup here. Otherwise, it's Lord of the Flies if I drop. Okay. Make co-host. There you go, Justine. Justine is now officially the co-host. Should that happen to me? Because that does happen from time to time. It's
So I did say we were from Maine.
okay.
Oh, that spectrum love.
So there's things that are for sure in life, and one of them is the internet is not as reliable as one would love.
Oh, yeah, I get it. Like I said, it's happened to me before on events. So I
Our
know.
internet's much better than our cell service.
So how do you learn all this stuff? Do you go apprentice at a distillery? Do you?
We did that. We did some classes and apprenticeships at a couple distilleries, and just get immersed in what we do. David's wife, my daughter-in-law, has a saying that she sort of developed as soon as she became part of the family.
Yep.
And it's from what, obsession?
Hobby to obsession to profession.
Yeah. I have probably created 11 businesses in my life that started off as a hobby. I mean, I really enjoyed golf for about 10 years of my life, and I installed a 9-hole par 3 golf course on some land that we had.
A lot of trial and error. So,
Mhm.
hey, this didn't taste good. Oh, well, when we first started, we built our own stills. We still are to this day, but we were putting heating elements directly in the mash, and we'd get that wonderful scorched corn flavor. So we decided, oh, looks like we need to do a double bottom still, and just lots of little things like that. Trial by error.
Trial and error. So yeah.
And then figure out why and research why, or how not to, or how to do other things.
And, when we got to the bigger stills, electricity is not an option. One of our companies is an oil and propane company, and we install boilers and all that fun stuff. And so when we moved to our current location, the barn, and we refer to it as the barn, we went from a 70-gallon still to a 250-gallon still, and now we, a year ago, put online a 750-gallon still that we built. And so everything's steam fired.
Yeah. So, and I assume that recipes are the same way. You're just through trial and error, you're developing what your recipes are, or did you look to historical recipes of, or try to replicate whiskey that you liked? How did you officially come up with what we're going to be trying today?
For my side, I like rye whiskey and I like bourbon. So it was just, let's make a wicked high rye bourbon. So, we're 37% rye.
Wow. Yeah.
And, it's up there. Did a couple recipes. We were aging in 5-gallon barrels. So, you're waiting your 8 months to a year and a half in that period of time. And, a lot of it's leap of faith, that you just have to go for it. And we made some mistakes without a doubt, but I'll never shy away from doing something in fear of making a mistake. Take it as the learning experience. So, it's just type of thing that it's working. I pinch myself frequently in my life that what we do works. I try not to analyze it too much.
So, one of the questions that I like to ask when we're talking, and most of the individuals that come on here represent, craft brands, smaller brands that haven't been around forever. If we were having Jim Beam in here and we said, what's your flagship whiskey? They would say, our Jim Beam White. And that is what it is. That's kind of set, and that's not going to change. If we said, well, what's that going to look like 25 years from now? They're going to say, we want it to taste exactly like it tastes now. With craft, it can be a little bit different because there's an evolution. You haven't been in it long enough. Long term, tell us what you feel, what you want to get out of your signature flagship whiskey.
On the bourbon side, we've had conversations based on again, smaller barrel or small barrel bourbon, which right now is our flagship. Our bottle and bond's coming on really strong. I think the bottle and bond right now being 5.5 years is quite good,
Mhm.
but really looking for it to be 7 and 8 year. I'm not a huge fan of bourbons or whiskeys over 8, 9 years.
Yeah.
They just get too heavy. And the other thing, our local water supply, our reservoir is surface water and natural spring. And 2 lifetimes ago, I had an EPA testing laboratory and a water company. So I know a little bit about water. And our water is cleaner than most bottled waters coming out of our spigot. I mean, we're 1/16 of a grain of hardness. And 2 days ago, we were 37 parts per million of total dissolved solids. So, I mean, the only thing that's in our water really is water.
Yeah.
So it gives a very soft trait to a lot of to actually all of our spirits.
Okay. Well, I think you've got us interested. So we always like to go through the tastings, traditional way, the classic way. We like to share nosing notes and then tasting and finishing notes. So, but if you don't mind, kind of walk us through what we should be expecting here as we take the first nose of this.
Typically when we're blending the barrels, we're trying to get like a nice balance, obviously, of, a little oakiness. There's some barrels that obviously have very little scent to them, but those typically reward us in other ways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm getting honey on the nose. What about
We
everybody
do a
else?
medium plus char typically, so
Mhm.
toast, and we're pretty happy with that for the age we're doing it.
Okay. And else? Light fruit, apricot, maybe, Tim's saying. As always, yeah, just feel free. Marzipan raisin bread from Ed.
Every now and then I get a little bit of a faint cocoa.
Faint cocoa, okay.
Yeah, just, it's not like chocolate. It's more like when you're making
Cocoa powder, the
cocoa
dry.
powder and it gets in the air and you just happen to inhale some of the faint dust. To me, it's just subtle.
Yeah, this is good. They're coming in quick here. That's always a good sign when you're getting a lot of different notes here. It just talks about the layers of smells that you get there. So you got honey on warm green bread, fresh herbs, lemongrass, cilantro, rye toast, honey, cedar, cocoa, wood notes, floral, and raisin. Jason nailed it with the lemongrass. Subtly sweet. It's a lot of good stuff coming in there. So I think we got to try it. Let's see what we got here. Cheers, gang.
Cheers.
Corn Pops cereal. Definitely get. It's got a nice finish on it. I'll say that. 86 proof. You definitely get the rye, so you're getting that for sure.
Yep, a little cinnamon.
Cinnamon, definitely. Earthiness on the back, bit of smoke. Same type of thing. I'm getting that for sure.
When we're picking through barrels, I kind of look for that caramelized sugar notes, like the caramels and creme brulee kind of toasted sweetness.
Full disclosure, I will always defer to David. I've done way too many crazy things in my lifetime.
Cycling kerosene has nothing to do with most pasta taste.
Well, that's good. We're getting a light caramel, rye spice, light caramel raisin. So,
Steve, I think the after party just might be the father there in that duo to share some of the stories.
Yes,
After party for everybody.
yes. The Q&A will all be just personal stories.
There's a couple books in there for sure.
Dave will be sharing personal experiences. Yeah. Light spice on the finish. Yeah. Very sweet on the. I agree with this. Very sweet on the front. Spice on the back. Yep. That's how it plays out for me as well.
We have had some people point out that it was crossing over to almost like a Scotch or a single malt type of thing, which I could never really understand because, I mean, we're only 5% malt barley.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, we've gotten that from several
Lot of people.
people.
Well,
We
I
have
can,
this, like,
yeah,
tourist trafficked area, so like, we'll have thousands of people that we come in, probably 5 people.
Yeah.
We'll say that.
yeah, I heard a little bit of that on the notes, like the smokiness and the earthy notes. I mean, that's right in line with more in the lines of tasting notes from a Scotch. So, yeah, it's great. So we're off to a great start. Again, David, thank you. We do appreciate it if you stick around. You got time to stick around and enjoy some whiskey and hear some stories from our other
Oh,
folks.
looking forward to all of them.
All right, excellent. So next up is Lisa Wicker from Widow Jane. I'm going to go ahead and pour that one too. Get that one going as we move on to the next
Yeah,
one.
it's been a while. Hey, David, I haven't seen David for a while. Yeah, the story thing, my oldest daughter.
Yeah, hi,
after
Lisa.
yeah,
Lisa knows everybody. So
when my oldest daughter graduated from college, she moved to Chicago and we're out and she's like, Mom, I want your list. I said, list of what? She goes, stuff you won't drink anymore. And I was sharp enough to say no. And she's like, why not? I said, because you're going to know what the stories are. Why I don't drink those things anymore, and we're not going to go there.
Mhm.
There's
And
just
Lisa,
things you just
you've
don't
got
need to know. Yeah.
You've got a great story, how you got here. So you did several different things. You worked in Kentucky bourbon, you've worked in wine, so you've got a very complex story that leads you to where you're at today, correct?
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Crazy ride. So
Mhm.
yeah, I started out in winemaking 20 years ago, and I'd worked in the arts for years and was raising 3 kids and patched my education together and did that for 10 years until I was asked to come to Kentucky and build a winery. There's a really old wine tradition in Kentucky, and I did that and immediately met Steve Beam. And part of the reason I accepted a job offer in Kentucky was because I wanted to learn to distill. I had the distilling bug really badly, and I was thinking, this is great. I can go down there and I'll make brandy, right? And I met Steve Beam, and trying to keep a long story decently short. The winery owners went through a real spectacular divorce, and I saw the writing on the wall, but I'd already met Steve. I was working with him at Limestone Branch in the evenings. We were already tinkering with blending and some other new product stuff. And he and Paul, his brother, took me to dinner 24 hours after I resigned the winery and offered me a full-time job there. So I got in there fast. It was 10 years ago. So I've been making alcohol for 20 years now, but yeah, it's been crazy, right? So I was there 3 years. Luxco purchased them. I got fired. I got picked up by, I had an offer from another amazing distillery and passed on it so I could accept an offer with Ted Huber at Starlight. Thought I'd be there for a very long time because I really loved what I was doing there. Got another offer, Drew Colesby, the Willet Master distiller. I saw him at a party in Bardstown, and a family friend was building the first craft distillery in Bardstown, and I went on that project as the general manager and distiller. Thought I'd stay on there forever and went out on my own. And some of the first people that called me were Sampson and Surrey, who had just purchased Widow Jane in Brooklyn. So
Very cool.
first time I talked to my boss, he called, he's like, I need somebody to move to, I'm interested in you for this job. I need somebody to move to Brooklyn. I said, no. Usually I'm used to saying yes all the time, and then try to figure stuff out. And so I walk into my living room, and Bren, which is one of the brands in our portfolio, there's a half a bottle of Bren in the front of my whiskey cabinet, and it's never in the front. I used to store it in the back with all the other malt whiskeys, right? It's like, well, I'm trying not to cuss anymore. It's like, well, that was an omen. I just missed that omen. And then he called back a little while later and said, a couple of weeks later, and said, I'm going to fly to Bardstown and take you to dinner. I really want to talk to you about this project. And so that's been almost 4 years ago.
Yes, but obviously you have a place in Brooklyn, but you still have your home in Bardstown, correct?
I still have a home in Main Street. I had bought my home. I've been waiting for one of the historic homes to go on the market. And I happened to be at a party in the backyard at Jim Beam and his cousin Steve Beam. And I said, Jim, if that house ever goes on the market next door to you, he said, Lisa, it's going on the market this week. So I bought the house 4 years ago this month, and then got the offer from Sampson and Surrey.
Of course, that's how that stuff
after.
works, right? It has to work that way.
So I go back and try to patch it together. That'll be my passion project one these days. But
Yeah. Yeah.
230 years old. It's pretty historic. A beam was born in the house, and yeah, it's on
Wow.
Main Street in Bardstown. So
That is cool. That is very, very, very cool. So tell us a little bit about the whiskey that we're going to be trying tonight.
yeah, the flagship whiskey, one of the things I was tasked with when I was hired from the previous owner, the 10-year was a source bourbon. We've got the split personality where we have source whiskey
Yep.
and we have whiskey that we're laying down ourselves. And the I was tasked with turning it into a blend so that we didn't have to drop the 10-year age statement on it. So I blend across Indiana, Tennessee, and Kentucky. It is ever evolving. In fact, I was thinking, I don't know what number bottle that you're drinking right now, but it, there's a couple notes that I'm always trying to hit. I'm trying to hit the dark stone fruit in it. I'm always trying to hit the baking spice, and outside that, pretty much anything goes, as long as it's all balanced and we're getting where we need to be to make it taste like Widow Jane. We proof down to with, I'm sure you've all heard our story about the mine water. We have a mine up in Rosendale, New York. Widow Jane gets its name from the Rosendale area. It's local folklore, so everybody's got their own version of it. Just like all folklore, it's based on truth, but it's been reincarnated in several different directions over the years. But our water too, David, is like, that's so interesting. I did not know about you in the water. It's incredible, right? Same thing. The first thing I did was hire some water engineers and go through and do all the analysis and everything on it, because I knew one of these days that the TTB will probably overnight say we're going to start, ingredient labeling. So everything that's going into it, I wanted to be sure that I was ready to go with the day that they decide to do that. But our cave is not the Widow Jane mine. There was some confusion with that with the old owner. We're from one of the Rosendale mines. We actually back up on the Widow Jane mine. We do not share the same water because of their man-made caves, because they mined limestone out of them. And then after they abandoned them, that's when they filled up with water. So like the Widow Jane mine comes in here and we come in here. The water's dripping down through the limestone, but it's not like it's spring fed, like we're sharing the same water. The Widow Jane mine, everybody can go visit. You can go up to Rosendale, the Snyder House, Century House is right there, and you can actually walk. They do concerts and things. We were getting ready to have a great big party when all of this stupid COVID, we're gonna have a party in the cave this summer. And
Really?
yes.
Of course.
Hopefully, we'll be able to pull that off before too long, because the acoustics in there are incredible. There's some musician stuff. So anyway, that's the Widow Jane mine. That's where we get our name, but that's not where we get our water.
Okay. And last time we talked, you did come on an event, early COVID times. We were doing right when we started our virtual bourbon stuff, and you guys were talking about, you're going to be opening a new distillery. Did all that mess up the timeline on that, or you
Yes.
still? I figured it has to, right?
Yeah, we've been working with the same code enforcement person, for 18 months, and so we're, working with the architects and working with the engineers, and we hired the same people that put Rabbit Hole together, right? So Luckett and Farley is our engineers and pod architects, and COVID starts, everybody starts working from home. They reassign our code agent, and the first one we get is he's like, oh, all this isn't right.
Really? Oh, great. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's Brooklyn, right? I mean, even when we got the property, it had 13 different addresses. We had to decide which one of the 13 addresses we wanted, so nothing's easy here. And so we decided to table that for the line. I did get it bonded, so I am using it in the new space. I did get it bonded.
Okay, that's good.
Like crazy, but yeah, that's been very, it was like we were all ready to go. The project was scheduled to start April 1st, and needless to say, that did not happen. So
yeah. So one other question about your flagship whiskey here. So 91 proof bourbon blend. Long term, do you guys see yourselves as producing that, or you're like, this is a good thing where it's at? We're going to be making our own other products, but those are different. Will you always continue to offer this blend that you do?
Steve, quite frankly, I don't know the answer. We're always evolving, right?
Yeah.
As we're laying down our whiskey, for 2 years in a row, we had the largest open pollinated heirloom corn project in the United States for whiskey. And, I go back and forth to Castle and Key, and we did not do very many barrels there last year. We did them, and then COVID hit, and I'm getting ready to do some more now in a few thousand in March. But we've been laying barrels down there, like crazy. And, we're still laying barrels down in Brooklyn. You know, we have New York grown corn from upstate that comes down to Brooklyn. It's all the same open pollinated cross between Bloody Butcher and Wapsie Valley. And then we still have seed corn that's being grown in Pennsylvania. So all of that's still happening, but yeah, it's been crazy. It's been crazy trying to manage, you know, and the farmer's like, how much longer are you going to hold this corn? Hold on to your horses. It's coming.
Yeah.
I'm coming in March. Yeah. So he sent me a text message today that we've got the best farmers. We've got the very, very best farmers. So thank God they've got a sense of humor.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah. That makes life a little bit easier.
Yes. Yeah.
So tell us, you know, a little bit about what we're going to experience here as we start to get into the tasting part of this.
Yeah, on the nose, generally, it's generally very classic bourbon, older bourbon. It's usually vanilla, it's caramel, it's brown sugar, orange peel, sometimes a bitter orange, sometimes some burnt orange. And, you know, on the palate, like I said, I'm always trying to nail that dark stone fruit. Sometimes it comes across as cherry. Interestingly enough, the mine water is pretty high in magnesium and calcium. You should never proof whiskey down with mine water, like in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
But I inherited that, and now I love it because you know there was some stability stuff since we don't chill filter, but we've got all of that remedied, and we put this gorgeous polished product now out on the shelf. But that mine water pops some of the Widow Jane notes. You know, early on, I'd get lazy and I would just use some DI, some distilled water. I'd use some reverse osmosis water and cut the whiskey. It's like, I'd have to throw that sample out because it's not the same.
Right.
It's almost identical. The mine water, the recipe is very close to a very famous French mineral water that we know in a green bottle.
Mm-hmm.
And if you let it go flat, if you let that mineral water go flat and cut some cask strength whiskey, we don't have one, you'd have to use somebody else's, and you cut a cask strength whiskey with it, you can tell what kind of notes that mineral water pops in those whiskeys and makes it, you know, because people will say even across our ryes, which right now are sourced, but hang on to your hat there about that in a minute. And you know, but it certainly makes Widow Jane whiskeys, you know, it's
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, you know, it's pretty classic bourbon in the very best sense. You know, I try to get it, make sure it's balanced.
I'm getting a lot of tasting notes over there, Lisa. So butterscotch, honey, floral, marzipan, vanilla extract, honey.
Vanilla extract, yeah. Marzipan, yeah.
Cinnamon. No, you get several said apples, vanilla and brown sugar. So you're definitely hitting on some of the classic notes there for sure. Justine, you've got the bottle there. If you don't mind sharing what is the batch number you were looking for, Lisa? She might, if she still got the bottles. I know they're empty, but I don't know if she kept them around. If she did, if she could share it in the chat, I'll ask you about that too.
Yeah, the whiskey's evolving. You know, early on I inherited some barrels. Early on, some barrels were purchased before I started. And then after I started, I bought some, you know, I started buying barrels and one of the whiskeys in particular wasn't drinking as old as the age statement on it. And I liked it for that reason, because it's been a great blending whiskey because it's not, it's really well distilled, but it wasn't super complex. And so the complexity was, you know, so I'm not competing three very complex whiskeys in the same blend. And so, but it's like, we need to move this along. It's not quite, in fact, you know, here's a trick. If you want to know a secret, go into the gift shop. Don't ask like the tour guides, ask the gift shop guy.
Really? Okay. That's where you get the straight scoop.
So you go in, and so even though I'm buying barrel, he has no idea who I am or why I'm there. And I said, can you like tell me about some of the rickhouse situations here? And he's like, oh yeah, you know, like, okay, bingo, that's my answer.
Right.
Right. So we moved those barrels and now they're coming along. So now they're like, oh my gosh, they're drinking their age now. And, you know, so blending it, you know, the blends I'm doing now are a little more intense than the blends I was doing initially, but I blended 330 batches of
wow
5-barrel small.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Justine came up with the number there. So we'll put you on the spot. Batch 251. What do you?
Oh yeah, you're in the mid-range. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those batches too. You know, I had some pretty wild whiskey in there.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to pull this back and find some more of those. You know, some of the whiskey that's not quite as complex because, you know, we were moving to pretty heavy tannin and pretty heavy cherry and all those sorts of things. The blends, the last 30 blends or so I've done been cherry bombs, you know, all
Okay.
the 300s, the late 200s and early.
I'll be on the lookout for that then. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. All right, let's take a taste of this. So cheers on this one. So Christy took a taste early. She said blackberry and red apple peel on the palate, green apple and tannins on the finish, she says. I definitely get apple there for sure.
And I'm drinking batch 102. And so I have like a burnt sugar caramel bomb,
Okay.
less fruit, more sugar. Yeah. So I've been able, you know, building off of the flagship, we've released, you know, I released a 14-year-old last year that was a blend of 14, 15, 16. And, you know, to David's point earlier, that's my whole goal, is not to turn, to make sure that I pull barrels that I can get it balanced. And you can still taste the bourbon, that you're not just tasting, you know, oak or over oak. And so that's quite the challenge. And so this year I did a 16, a 15-year-old is 15, 16, 17, but we've done okay with it, you know. The 14-year-old got picked as one of the top 20 bourbons of the century so far by a couple different polls. So we did
That's
okay.
not bad, yeah.
We did okay. Yeah.
Spiced orange peel on the finish.
Yes.
We're getting that, a little clove and orange peel on the finish. So you're getting that from multiple folks there.
That's
taste like delicious. So if you could define delicious, there you go. Apple blossom, dried orange peel, nice oily feel, but light texture. Yeah, I'm in agreement there. So really good stuff we got here.
Yeah, I'm all over this, the mouthfeel on this Wiggly Bridge. This is incredible. The mouthfeel on this one's unbelievable.
It is. Yeah, that was very, very nice. So yeah, a little nice viscous feel to it. So it's good. So you said you had a story about the rye. What was that before we move on?
We laid some rye whiskey down. And, you know, we've laid some rye whiskey down in New York and in Kentucky, and just pay attention.
Okay. She's it's kind of there's
I'm
maybe
hitting the bench. I'll tell you what, it's so preliminary that I'm getting ready to hit the bench. They, you know, we bought the first, you know, anyway, there'd be a lot of bench trials coming on here. I'm very excited about this year, because last year we got off, you know, we got derailed by the new project, and you know, our innovation was good. You know, we did also released something called Decadence, which I did a 21 barrel blend. And then we rebarreled it in Crown Maple syrup barrels. And it's had a, you know, been very well accepted. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that was really great stuff for sure. All right. Well, Lisa, thank you. And it was fun learning about your flagship whiskey. And again, we'll have you stick around, enjoy some whiskey, learn about the other brands we've got here featured. Okay.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear Paul.
You entertain easy then, Lisa.
You know that already.
So Paul Haletko from Few Spirits. Paul, tell us about the name Few Spirits. How'd that come about?
Few really just means that we don't make a whole lot. We just make a few. You know, we're a small grain to glass distillery, and you know, we don't have a whole lot. If you sell it, we make it. So there's only so much you can make. So we just call it a few.
Few. Okay.
Now that said,
not right.
A lot of people do notice a similarity between our name and some initials. And so we are located, or the distillery itself is located in Evanston, Illinois, which is, it's where I live. It's cool and all, but Evanston was the birthplace of the entire U.S. Prohibition movement, which was led by a group of women known as the Women's Christian Temperance Union. And the second head of the WCTU was an Evanston resident named Frances Elizabeth Willard. And so a lot of people see a similarity between the initials of Frances Elizabeth Willard and Few, although that is, of course, a sheer and total coincidence.
Right.
Total coincidence.
Yes. And Paul, you were an attorney by trade, correct, before you started doing all this stuff?
I've had a few careers in my day, probably a little bit like Mr. Wood over there. But I got a law degree a few years ago, but I was also a pro guitar player for a while. I built guitar effects pedals for a while. Owned a record label for a while. Managed bands for a little bit. Um, I've had what you might call a checkered career
Hmm.
with several failures, shall we say? But
But you probably
such
end up
as life.
drawing on all of it, right? In the business that you are now, in the distillery, you think, well, how does all this come about? But it probably each part does play a factor in what you're doing.
Yeah, life is what happens when you're making other plans, right?
Hmm.
So you can't get, or at least I don't get super worried about a lot of stuff. There's enough stress in life without getting too stressed out.
Right.
But really what I try to do is create and make new things because that's what really gets me excited. And so really I'm just the luckiest guy on the planet because I found something that I can create and I'm actually pretty fucking good at it. And
Uh-huh.
so that's pretty that's kind of cool. It's pretty lucky. I've had a lot of stuff I've tried to create in the past, but maybe I'm not so good at.
So,
But
how do you get there, Paul? How did you learn this business? Because again, it sounds very different than any of your other stops. You talked about this career. Nothing is a dotted line to get to where you're at. So, tell us how you got there.
lifetime of poor decisions.
Hmm.
But I made beer at home for 20 years, like everybody and their sister does. But relevantly, I've got family history in the alcohol business. My grandfather's family owned what is now a major brewery in the Czech Republic. And when the Nazis invaded back in 1939, you guys probably all heard about it. But Nazis invaded the Czech Republic. It's now Czech Republic, was Czechoslovakia. They confiscated the brewery and murdered the entire family in the camps.
Unbelievable.
And
Yeah.
so after the war, my grandfather, of course, did survive. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. But he spent the rest of his life trying to get the brewery back and never did.
Hmm.
And when he died, it kind of struck me that all of this family legacy and history is gone forever unless I do something about it.
That's cool. That is really
So
cool.
I did, or I am, or I will someday. But we're sure shit trying our best, and I'm trying to bring back that family legacy and connection. I was never lucky enough to have a big or strong relationship with my grandfather for various reasons that go well beyond the scope of of a whiskey chat. But it's kind of a way of trying to build a relationship with him from the grave.
Yeah.
And maybe someday he'll look up and be proud of me because I think he would be.
He'll look up. Okay.
It wasn't necessarily a good man.
Yeah, I mean, I caught that. You didn't get that one by me, my friend. So yeah, I got it. So yeah.
Yeah, you can't pick your grandparents, but you can do it. You can try to do them right.
Yeah, well, that's very cool. So, tell us a little bit about this flagship whiskey because you do, despite the name Few Spirits, you do have several different offerings. So, tell us about the one we're going to be drinking tonight. Your 93 proof bourbon.
The bourbon, yes. Yeah, so I'm afraid I don't remember what I sent you guys.
Yeah.
But a 93 proof bourbon, that's our number one seller. Always gets written up as one of the top 10 bourbons, not from Kentucky, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And I just always lead off with, the first thing you'll notice about Few Bourbon is that it does not taste like Kentucky bourbon. Primary reason, it's not Kentucky bourbon. We make it ourselves in Evanston, Illinois. And that's not because Kentucky makes bad bourbon. That's bullshit. Kentucky makes great bourbon. We all know that.
Yes.
But there's exactly zero reason to make a whiskey that tastes like Kentucky bourbon because they already do that.
They do it pretty good. So yeah.
And they do it pretty good. So what am I going to do? The world's worst sales pitch would be, hey, try Few Spirits. It tastes just like Four Roses. And it's only $20 more. And I love Four Roses. It's my favorite Kentucky bourbon.
I do too.
And you got 50 people on the call. We probably have 50 different favorite Kentucky bourbons. Although I'd wager a couple of us are Four Roses, but so it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah.
Point being is that I'm not going to make Four Roses.
Mm-hmm.
Could I? Sure. I'll take the credit that I could make a whiskey that tastes like Four Roses, but I don't want to.
Right.
I want to make my whiskey, and I want to make a whiskey that's nice and spicy and balanced. And I don't want it to be a pepper bomb. I want it to be cinnamon. So, I always talk about the cinnamon and the cassia and the clove. Yes, you'll get some pepper. Yes, you'll get some of that other classic high rye bourbon. It's only 20% rye, which qualifies as a high rye in the nomenclature. Obviously, there are higher rye bourbons out there, including, of course, Woodley Bridge.
Yes.
That's not. We're not the highest rye. We're just we're looking for a bourbon that's nice and balanced. We look for that spicy cinnamon flavor. We're not talking like the red hot candies. We're talking about the really complex cassia cinnamon, like you might get from like a curry or something.
Mhm.
And we take what I always talk about us as taking much more of a brewer's approach to making whiskey than a distiller's approach, because we are fastidious and freaks about our fermentation. We use low yielding yeast. We overload this, we overload that. We agitate our ferments. We ferment on the grain. Like, we do so many things different. But what we do is try to take that brewer's approach and really be very fastidious about a yeast and very fastidious about our fermentation. So that's the way we make it. Obviously, you talk to 50 distillers, you're gonna find 50 different ways of making whiskey, all of which are valid. This is how we make it. We're really proud of how we make whiskey, and we talk about it because fuck it, I'm proud of it.
Absolutely. So as we start to nose this, what should we be anticipating on the nose on this ball?
Yeah, obviously you're gonna be looking for that classic bourbon, the cinnamons, the vanillas, the caramels, that oak, oak tannin, but not over, not over oaked, not over tannins. But again, cinnamon, orange, clove, maybe a little bit of white pepper kind of peeking around the edges if you're looking for it. But also you'll get some nice fruitiness as well, but kind of gentle. I frequently get a little bit of cherry, not like the Widow Jane cherry that that Lisa gets in that Widow Jane, which is fucking magnificent. You don't get that from few. That's not our house style. We do what we do. But we're looking for something that's balanced. We want something that's spicy. We want something that's thick, rich, and full flavored. You should get a really nice mouthfeel. 93 proof, so it is, it's high enough that you can put it on the rocks. You can add some water. You can put it with Coke. You can do cocktails with it. There's enough alcohol in there to stand up, but there's not so much alcohol that you have to do all that. This isn't 101 proof. It's not 107. It's not cast strength. At 93 proof, it's something that you can drink neat. You can sit back, but it shouldn't be aggressive, but it should be very drinkable and a very approachable bourbon that's friendly to both the experienced drinker as well as the noob.
You're getting a lot of good notes in here. You're getting the cinnamon, orange, brown sugar, caramel, vanilla, banana, sugar, banana nut bread with caramel icing. I like that one. I do get a little banana there too, for sure, which is not one that you mentioned, but I also am getting that. A couple of people have said that.
It is fucking excellent whiskey, that's for sure.
Malted balls, dusty, vanilla, yeastiness, fresh spices, cinnamons, smoke, plum, vanilla. A lot of layers of notes there. So I'm gonna give it a taste and cheers, like everyone else. Cheers, buddy.
Yeah, I'm on vacation, so I'm not really. I don't have my whiskey with me.
That's too bad. That's too bad. Few stands for fucking excellent whiskey, Chris Lupo says. Feel free to use that if you like. He put it out there. You can use that.
Fine Evanston whiskey, first Evanston whiskey for every woman.
For every woman. Okay.
I've heard another one that I'm like, no, get the fuck out of my fucking shop with that bullshit. But no, it's we make great whiskey. It's what we come in every day. Grain comes in, bottles of whiskey go out.
Mm-hmm. A little cola note there from the Ewalds. What else you guys getting on the taste here? A lot on the nose stuff. Baking spices, oak, some light tropical fruit. I like that. Definitely get that. A lot on the baked goods. I get like a cinnamon roll or something like that. So that's definitely there. Great finish with lots of spice on the palate. Agreed. Sweet front, then progressive heat, great point, and berry mid tongue. Nice. So yet another winner. It's great stuff, Paul. Great.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. You lived up to your word there. You've got some great whiskey for sure. So
Yeah, we're trying.
if you don't mind, we'll have you stick around and available for questions at the end. Is that okay?
Yep, you got it.
All right. Now, next up, Justine's best friend. Because as we know, Justine does the packaging and all that. And Ryan Thompson sent a prepackaged 50 milliliter. So she had an easy month this past month. So well, she didn't have to package that out at all. So Ryan, she was really happy with you when those showed up.
Justine, I got you.
So yeah.
Hey guys, it's Ryan from 10th Mountain Whiskey and Spirit Company in Colorado. Steve, thanks again for getting such a great, passionate group together, man. You always bring together some incredible people. The distilleries, nonetheless. Paul, it's great to be on the same group with you. I was at your shop about 2 years ago, and your staff was extremely welcoming and showed me around and had a great couple hours there, man. You weren't there that day, unfortunately, but your crew did a great job, so thank you.
Well, actually, yeah, pre-COVID, I was on the road, 60 to 70% of the time. So
Understand.
Never ever there, but we got a fantastic
Understand.
team.
And Lisa, I know the house you bought, so kudos to you. That's awesome. And the Wicked guys, I can't wait for the Q&A at the end of the session. So we'll get through a little 10th Mountain whiskey and a 10th Mountain bourbon here tonight. So if anyone doesn't know our namesake, we're named in honor of the 10th Mountain Army Division that originated in our area in the 1940s. They were Mountain Warfare Specific Army Division. Went off and won some very significant battles in World War II that Paul kind of alluded to there for a little bit. When they returned, they started the outdoor ski industry as we know today, Vail Mountain being one, which is our backyard. What we say is we're ski bums that have a whiskey drinking problem. So that's all we are. They are still one of the most active military divisions today. They're based in upstate New York in a place called Watertown, just about an hour north of Syracuse, a couple miles south of the Canadian border. We get a ton of support, not just from them, but from all the military branches. And it's near and dear to our heart that we support different military nonprofits. We're a philanthropic distillery first and foremost. We employ a number of different veterans and always look to hire vets when we can. We support Vail Veterans Program here in our backyard. We support Heroes and Horses, the 4th Infantry reunion we were just at. I could go on and on. So that is very first and foremost to what we do here, and hence the namesake, the 10th Mountain Whiskey and Spirit Company. We originated in 2013. We say we were established in 2014 because after going through all the licensing processes is when we're actually able to start distilling and start selling some young spirits at that point. So we were established in 2014. We originated, we have 5 spirits currently. We're about to launch a 6th spirit in April and a 7th spirit in July. So tonight we're going to taste our 10th Mountain Bourbon. We also have a 10th Mountain Rye Whiskey, an unaged whiskey, which is our Colorado Clear Mountain Moonshine, a potato vodka, and a cordial, which is a Sage Peach Vanilla cordial. But tonight, everything what you guys have in front of you is a little 10th Mountain Bourbon that we sell in 750 milliliter bottles, and also just launched our nice little 50 milliliter bottles just a couple months ago. And the ABV network got their hands on probably the first 50 or so, I tell you. So,
nice.
Yeah. But it's 75% corn, 21% rye, and 4% malted barley. We make it here in house. I'm at our tasting room, but our tasting room is connected to our distillery, just about 20 yards away from me. We use a 500-gallon combination pot column still from Vendome.
And Ryan, how did you learn the business? Again,
yeah, I was going to rewind there, Steve. You got it. Nice timing there. So I moved to Vail in 1998, and I bartended around town for 4 years. I had a couple notable restaurants here in town. In 2002, I started my own restaurant, Casual American Comfort Food, which I still have my thumbs on today. And I have to kind of dance around how I say that because you can't own a distillery and a restaurant that has a liquor license at the same time. So I still have my thumb on that. And then, like Paul referenced, a lot of us out there are homebrewed. I've been homebrewing for 20 years. just having fun with it. And every neighborhood has a brewery in it these days, and rightfully so. Even out here in our little valley, there's 4 breweries. Excuse me. And so a brewery, I don't think was an option, but a distillery was. And a distillery was kind of the next challenge, taking the brewing to the next step. I'm always up for a good challenge. And so I was like, well, hell, someone in this town is going to make whiskey sooner or later. Might as well be me. And so I actually went off to Moonshine University in 2013 in Louisville. I was in their first class out there with those guys and got hands-on distilling knowledge there with a 250-gallon pot column so that they have at their school. Came back home, got a little bit of distillation experience with a 13-gallon still that we have on display and in the back during our tours. And then from there, got an SBA loan, took a bunch of money from my savings, everything I had. And then, now 7 years later, we have that 500-gallon combination pot column still, and we're making 9 different spirits, but 5 are released now, 2 about to be released in the next couple of months. So like Lisa said, long story short, I guess. So.
Yes. Yeah. And you were just on an event where you announced you're going to be coming to Missouri. So my home state. So
yeah, absolutely. See,
cool.
We can't wait to get there. There's a new, well, not a new distributor. They've been in Kansas, and we've been working with them for the past year and a half, and they're about to branch into Missouri. They've been great to work with. You can't say that about all the distributors out there, but they've been great to work with. And so they're branching into Missouri, and we're going to branch in with them. So you're on our radar when we get out there. Expecting our opening order anytime, any day now. So stay tuned for that. We are in 12 other markets. We're in Colorado, obviously, Georgia, Oklahoma, Kansas, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, New York, Rhode Island, California, Wyoming, and then we also sell direct to consumer through a third party named Speakeasy.
Okay.
And so you can get direct to consumer in 35 states. So
that's good to know. Good to know for sure. All right. Well, tell us a little bit specifically, because you've got several other items specifically about this 92 proof bourbon we're going to be tasting.
Absolutely. What we're going to be enjoying tonight is a 10th Mountain bourbon. It is 75% corn, 21% rye, and 4% malted barley, all aged in American New Oak barrels, some in 5-gallon barrels, some in 10-gallon barrels, some in 30-gallon. Majority of it is in 53-gallon barrels at this point. On the nose, it's going to be a little more delicate. Is it a little younger spirit? We don't have a 10-year yet. We don't have an aged product in the 6 to 8 year range. So it's going to be a little more delicate on the palate, or on the nose. And then again, on the palate, it's going to have a nice, a long lingering finish as well. On the nose, you know what, I'm going to shut up and I'll just hear what the audience has to say. And I won't,
that's already starting. That's already starting. So yeah, we got honey bun, butterscotch on the nose. Justine said that. Sweet honey blueberry cornbread. That's good too from Ed. And Jonathan agreed with Justine on the honey bun. Vanilla, honey butter. And I agree. I'm getting like buttered bread on the nose, which is good. I like that. Vanilla.
Yeah, we certainly get a lot of honey out there, a bunch. That blueberry, I love that description. That's great. It's again 92 proof, so kind of in the middle, I think, of Paul and correct me, Lisa. Was yours 91 proof, or maybe Wiggle was a 91? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Widow Jane 91. Yeah. So
I don't know if you did that on purpose, Steve, or not, but nice work.
Yeah, it's just, Justine does all that, so yeah, she puts it together. So Chris Lupo, Cracker Jack, I like that. That's good. Sourdough bread and fresh butter. There you go. Neil and Melanie got what I was thinking. So that's the benefit of working as a group on these things. Someone comes up with exactly what you're looking for. Lots of butter and honey. Yep.
And at the tasting room, so we have one at the distillery, which I'm sitting at right now, but we also have one at the base of Vail Ski Mountain, which is in Vail Village. And people often every day ask, hey, how old's your whiskey? How old's your bourbon? How old's your rye? And we answer back, well, why don't we give you a sample and then you tell us how old you think it's going to be? And more times than not, they say 4 to 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people guess a little younger and they're right, but most people guess it's a 4 to 6 year old bourbon. So
that's pretty good. Tim is drawn in our podcast here. We're big into cork pops, and we famously work with Lenny Eckstein a lot from Deerhammer, and his cork pops are bad, but he says he's at one of the higher elevations. Yeah. If you don't mind, can we hear a cork pop from Vail? What that sounds like?
Let's see. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, Lenny is just about 2 hours south of us here. I was at his place about just a couple weeks ago, but I don't know I don't even know where my mic is on my computer, but you ready? 3, 2, 1.
Oh yeah, look at that. That'd be a winner on the show. Lenny, he's doing it wrong. So yeah, I always said it's him. The Ewalds went to visit him and they were like, no, it's the altitude. We agree. It's not Lenny's fault. And then I hear that I'm like, oh, this is Lenny's fault. He's doing something wrong. He needs a new mic or something. I don't know what's going on.
We'll have
These
to
are
have
the
a court
worst.
off, I guess, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Sometimes
know,
we
Lenny's
just,
probably, I don't know what his elevation is up there in Buena Vista.
Yeah.
Buena Vista, sorry.
Buena Vista. Yes.
Yeah.
It's weird, but that's how they say it. So.
They've got a
He's
couple more,
8,800.
8,800.
Yeah.
88.
So we're at 6,800 here,
Okay.
where we're at. We actually distill in Gypsum, Colorado, which is 30 minutes west of Vail. Vail is 8,150, but in Gypsum it's 6,800. So
Gotcha.
speaking of people talking about the water in their whiskey, those stories. So we do have a story ourselves,
Okay.
if you believe that. When we were talking to the town back in 2011, 2012, somewhere in that area, we're sitting down and at their conference table at the town offices, say, hey, we want to start a distillery here. And they're putting down bottled water at the table and they apologize for putting bottled water in front of us. I was like, why are you apologizing for the bottled water? They're like, oh, well, our city water is being worked on today, so everything's shut down, so we don't have that opportunity to pour you out of the tap, but here's some bottled water instead. And they were disappointed. And I was like, well, what's going on with your city water? And they're like, well, it's amazing. We take great pride in our city water here. It comes straight down. It's Rocky Mountain Snow Melt, comes from Gypsum Creek. And like, well, that's a great thing. Let's just go with that. And so been telling that story since day one.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. All right. On the taste, I think it's time to give this thing a taste and let's get some notes on that. So cheers, Ryan. Definitely get approximately 8,000 feet for that. Okay. I get the buttery taste. It comes through in the taste as well.
I like to describe it. It's a delicate bourbon. I'm not going to influence with the tasting notes necessarily, but it's a delicate bourbon with a medium finish on it. 92 proof again. And everyone here is drinking, I think their bourbons neat tonight. And so all four, I think, have been really easy drinking bourbons. And they're all of them relatively high proof. So.
Jonathan Ortiz, honey butter, little floral notes, very smooth. Light clove and honey butter from the Bear. Yeah. The Bear says that. A butterscotch with light char. I like that. That's cool. Jason Hunt appreciates you're honoring the great 10th Mountain.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheers.
He's a big military guy, so yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
So that's good.
Yeah, and a couple of notes here. Corn's coming in up front, and that's definitely 75% corn. So that's right on.
Balance finish. It starts sweet, moves to the back, balances in the middle. I agree with all that. Yeah, that's an easy drinker for your pie crust.
Jim Murray from Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible, like him or love him or hate him. He rated it 92 points. Nice. So pretty proud of that.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Finish is drier than expected from Ed Escott.
Sure. And that's that 21% rye that we use, Ed, I think is where that's coming in from. Because when you those rye notes are going to add a little dry finish to it, that kind of cottony on the back of your palate.
Yeah, honey butter corn cake. That's good because I get the corn in there too. So it's great to be able to taste the grain like that. So that's where those younger offerings can help out. You still get the benefit of it's not all just from the barrel. So that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we started aging early on in 5-gallon barrels. It was pretty much 100% of what we were doing. And then economically, you want to graduate to 53-gallon barrels as soon as you can from a business standpoint and maybe from a connoisseur standpoint as well. So we still have some 5 gallons around, but we graduated to 10 and 30 gallon, but the majority of what we have is 53 gallon right now. Number 4 char on all those as well. So.
Oh, Jason followed up. His father was actually in the 10th Mountain Division. pretty wild. And I know you like connecting with those type of folks and hear that
Absolutely.
stories. You
Cheers to that.
honor those guys when they come in and stuff like that. So
Yeah, absolutely.
got
Free
the-
tours to all veterans.
yeah,
If you catch me when I'm down here, then I'm happy to share some special barrels with you as well. That's my email address I just put in. If you want to connect with me, would love to, and would love to hear more about your father's stories as well.
yeah, or some
we
pictures
do
from your
have a lot
dad if he's got them. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, exactly. We do get a lot of support from the SF guys down in Colorado Springs. Then also the Navy SEALs really connect with what we're doing as well for a certain a reason there. I guess we'll save that for a different night, but certainly get a lot of military support. It's something we're very proud and passionate about, and is supporting them in return. So.
Good deal. Well, great whiskey, and it was great across the board. We from start to finish, we got to enjoy 4 great pours here tonight. Really excellent stuff. So I appreciate our panel coming in and allowing us to taste that. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to you guys. We've got time left here on the clock for a little Q&A. So feel free to ask anything. You can open up your mic if you like and just ask the question, or you can put it in the chat if you prefer. Either way works. And you can ask the entire group, or you can pick out someone individually if you prefer to know something specific from them. Feel free. Anybody got a question?
Yeah, Ryan, who's building your barrels? Who's raising your barrels?
You know, we have been using Barrel 53 from out of St. Louis.
Nice.
We just bought our last ones from them, are transitioning to the guys out in West Virginia.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
And one of the big reasons is Rocky Mountain Barrel Company down in Denver, where I was at this afternoon. One of my reasons I went down to Denver. They've started getting a group of distilleries from Colorado, and they're being a middleman and buying them in bulk and then distributing them here in Colorado. So I forget off the top of my head that Cooper's name out in West Virginia. But for the past couple of years, we have been getting them from Barrel 53 in St. Louis.
It's called West Virginia Barrel Company.
Thank you, Paul. That makes sense. Appreciate that.
And they're nice barrels, but it's not a clever name.
Right. Yeah, we got a sample of their barrels about 6-8 months ago, maybe, and I really liked them. We had 4 barrels as a test, and our assistant distiller are thrilled with them. And now the price is right to get them landed here, and so we're gonna switch over. So
Yeah,
Well, we had
our
a
sample
great
just came in. We got a sample from them about 2 months ago.
yeah, I think we were impressed. So I'd love to hear what you say, Paul, in a couple months. So.
Yeah, we haven't even tried it yet. They hit me up like, hey, what do you think about it? I'm like, motherfucker, it's been 2 months.
Yeah, exactly.
You want me to judge now? I'm happy to judge your product now. You want that? What
Right.
you want? Like, well, no.
Right.
What do you think? I'm like, that's what I thought.
I love their story. They're doing, they revived a depressed economy out there. They raised a ton of money, built an incredible state-of-the-art facility, offering a lot of jobs for that area. And I think the product is showing all that. So fingers crossed. So we're slowly transitioning over to those guys. But over the past couple of years, had a great relationship with Barrel 53.
What else you guys want to know?
Hey, I want to take a few minutes just to thank all 4 of you for coming on, because I know it's time out of your schedule and you're all busy because distilling's crazy. And as far as that, normally I don't drink lower proof. I just want to tell you that here. But these different events have really taught me to appreciate some of these bottles that I wouldn't normally buy because they are lower proofs, but I really do like them. And any one of these I could consider drinkable and put it on the shelf. I also had one quick question for Lisa, because I picked up some different bottles from all over. I got a bottle from Boston, but most of them are single barrel picks. So you were talking about buying barrels. Is there any specific ones that you really chase after? Or, I mean, I got some 10s and I've had some 12s and I really like some of the 12s, but is there something that you really chase after when you're sourcing?
Some of those single barrels I inherited with the job. And so I go through and, I make all the selections on those single barrels, our Lucky 13 program. We used to have a single barrel You know, when the company started, sometimes they were from Kentucky, sometimes they were from Indiana. Everything we've got now is from Indiana. And so then we moved into Lucky 13. And those are all Indiana barrels. We're talking about proof, right? And, you know, we all know that sometimes whiskey gains proof and sometimes it loses proof, right? And so I was getting some barrels in that were fabulous, but they were under proof. And so I tell my boss, you know, I'm like, we need to name this Unlucky 13 because it's 13 years old. He's like, Lisa, we're not naming anything unlucky. So he said, let's call it Lucky 13. And so those range in proof from 91 to 99 because most of our single barrels are all 99, but some of them were not hit. Some of them were not at 99. Some of them, you know, I get at 97. And so I needed to be able to put a little bit of the mine water in because that certainly pops some of the Widow Jane notes. And so that's where our single barrel program is at. And, you know, it's the lovely thing about Widow Jane since I've started there is, you know, we've got our set whiskeys that we would like to keep on the market, but we also, you know, everything's shifting and changing to kind of respond to what we have available. But, you know, it's so much fun. I'm going barrel shopping here this next week. So.
Oh, nice. It's that time. Okay.
I got the checkbook and I'm getting ready to go shopping.
Very cool.
Yeah. It's fun.
Oh, I've got a question for you.
Chess game. It's a chess game by, you know, as much as I love making whiskey, but as much as I love that, it's a chess game buying barrels, making sure you're the best barrels.
And blending that stuff. Yeah. That's cool. Paul, my question for you was collaboration with Alice in Chains. So you talked a little bit about your background, guitar player and stuff like that. That had to be pretty cool. So tell us a little bit about working with the band and what their involvement was.
Yeah, I think
James and who's the other ones, Paul?
Flaming Lips,
Flaming Lips,
Sarah Shook, Bloodshot Records. We've got another one we haven't announced yet, but that whiskey is, pardon my French, but fucking magnificent. And it's really exciting and fun. So every project or collaboration that we do is going to be a little bit different. And to me, that's why we do it, is because it is a little bit different. And some people have this idea, other people have that idea. And really, you know, we take that collaborative and creative approach because that's what I want to do. I want to make shit. And I don't see a huge, or at least philosophically, obviously the practicalities are very different, but philosophically, I don't see any difference between, you know, going in the studio and recording a song and going in the distillery and laying down whiskey or blending whiskey. To me, it's all the same thing. And I was just talking with the band that hasn't been announced yet and hasn't been released. And he was like, "Oh, you know, that's great whiskey." I'm like, "Yeah, I could sell the whiskey easy, but it's a lot more fun to make the whiskey with friends."
Mm-hmm.
You know, we want to make whiskey the same way that y'all are drinking it, with friends, with family. And so when we get these opportunities to work with bands like the Flaming Lips and Alice in Chains, and you know, I had a call today with a band that, you know, if you told 13-year-old Paul that he was going to be talking to these people, you know, in the not super distant future, he would have just fucking laughed at you and said, "No fucking way. I'm a farm boy from Michigan. They're never going to talk to me." But yeah, here we are.
Here you are.
And, you know, it's that creativity and working with people who don't know whiskey. I mean, they know what they like, but they're not like whiskey nerds. Like, you know, I can go and I talk to them about, you know, chord changes and, you know, the benefits of this tube versus that tube in a JCM 800. And to me, it's like, oh, that's the coolest shit ever. Oh my God, you know, you got the EL34 in the preamp there. Holy shit, that's awesome. And they're like, oh yeah, of course it's EL34. So what? But it's that creative mind that gets applied in different ways. And when you work with these bands, it's really exciting because of the different nature of the creativity that they have. It's just different. We're in Michigan, a little farm town, about a half hour, 45 minutes outside of Kalamazoo. So if you're from Michigan, you got to do the fucking hand game.
Yeah.
It's like right over here.
Yeah.
Paul, do you reach
But,
out to those bands? They reach out to you, or how does that work?
Again, it depends on the project. We now have, we're lucky enough now that I've got a little bit of notoriety in some circles. And so at this point, for the most part, they come to us.
Yeah.
The band I was
Something
talking.
similar with different military colonels and generals and organizations and whatnot. It's mostly fundraisers at this point. Do the bands pay you up front? Do you get a cut on the back end? We could talk about business offline if you don't want to share it here.
That's probably better offline because no one else cares. But again, every deal is different. And you got to figure out what various people want and what you can do, what you can't do, and what they want and what they can do and what they can't do. Just having the adult conversations and trying to figure out what people want to do. The bands I've said no to, like if you would have told 13-year-old Paul I was going to say no to this band, like A, you fucking talking to him? What the fuck?
Right.
But 2, you said no. Why the fuck would you say no to band
Right.
X? Like, well, because it's the wrong deal at the wrong time.
Sure.
And believe me, it hurts me the bands I've said no to. I still can't believe I said no. Like, really?
Yeah.
But wrong deal at the
kudos to you.
wrong
I
time.
love the Alice in Chains one. I love the Flaming Lips one. Nice work, man. You got a good thing going there.
Yeah, it's fun. It's creatively fun, and a guy like me who really, most people would say I suffer from, but I prefer to think of it as a joy. But I enjoy a raging case of ADD, and stuff like this really helps me to manage it because I can really focus on doing some really cool stuff, which then distracts me from making bourbon every day. That's just the way I am, and so I feed my ADD rather than try to starve it.
Yeah, I've got a question and really everyone is here's kind of from some degree of a little bit of a harsh climate, but we talked to we had the Garrison brothers on and they're talking about how tough it is in Texas. So I want to point this question towards Dave and David in Maine, and then I'd like to have Ryan weigh in on it as well. What are some of the challenges you have, making whiskey in the climate that you're in? So obviously in Maine, we think of very cold, very harsh climate, tough conditions. So tell us about that.
Well, it's probably not the answer you're looking for. I don't think we have any.
Well, maybe it's a great spot then. Yeah.
Maine is a big state. I am a 60-minute drive to Beacon Hill in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
I can drive 8 hours north and still be in our state. So we refer to it as York is at mile 7 on the interstate. So
we're not right near the ocean too, so the temperature swings. We'll have snow 4 miles inland we have a little mountain in our town, and there'll be a foot of snow there, and we'll get like a dusting at the distillery. So it's
And
huge
rain.
temperature swings.
when we were aging in smaller barrels, 5s and 10s, primarily at our York Beach, we have 2 distilleries. The one we started in is in downtown York Beach. It's 298 steps to low tide. My daughter-in-law measured it for our brochure. We're kind of OCD that way. But anyways, those smaller barrels, we got a pretty good salinity hit from the ocean, especially the barrels that were laid up in the spring and dumped in the fall because they had the whole summer seaweed in the air type of thing. And we noticed it, and that was, I don't know, maybe 5 or 8 batches, and then it started to disappear as we went from 10s and 30s. When we moved 98% of our production to the barn, which is now 2 miles from the ocean, and right now, everything we're laying up is in 53s. Well, not everything. We're still doing some 30s because our small barrel bourbon is such a good seller for us. And we settled in at 3.5 years is really the sweet spot
Okay.
on that. Goes much more than that. It,
A little tannic.
yeah, a little too much tannins in it. We're in a tourist area, so here's a negative. During the winter time, I can walk out of my driveway and lay down in the street in downtown New York Beach and probably take a 2-hour nap and not get bothered by a car. Not so great for business.
Yeah.
But, you know, as our family businesses, we're very diversified in a lot of different unrelated things. So, you know, when something that's tourist orientated is pretty well either closed or skeleton crew, the other companies, car washes, oil company and stuff like that, the wintertime is their busy time. So I've definitely balanced out what we do.
Maximize our time.
Yeah. Wow. Nice. Ryan, how about you then? You've got you know, a challenging climate, but you've also got the altitude thing too. Do you find it? Do you experience any unique challenges, or like with the bridge, you're like, no, it's just kind of business as usual, you know, from the other distilleries we talked to.
Yeah, to his point, it's all we know at this point right now. But we are at 6,800 feet where we distill. And so so distillation is going to happen a little bit earlier in the process than at sea level, but you get used to that aspect. More importantly, as it ages, the angel share is going to be a little bit more. We're in a very dry climate here, so the angel share of alcohol is going to dissipate a little bit quicker. But in the same breath, in our location here in Gypsum, the temperature swings, and I forget the terminology. There's some scientific terminology. Paul, you might know. I'll call you out on it. You're maybe not. I don't know. I forget. The temperature swings are huge here. This morning it was 2 degrees, and this afternoon it was 45. In the summertime, it could be 10 degrees and then 100 degrees in the afternoon. And that's going to help age spirits a little bit there.
You mean are you talking about the hydrostatic pressure within the rough vacuum of the barrel?
I think you nailed it. Yes. From a business perspective, Steve, it's more challenging because in the wintertime, we have to plan for a snowstorm that's going to delay any kind of raw material getting to us for 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time, maybe 4 weeks. And then our products, our pallets being picked up for our distributor. All right, they're going to be picked up tomorrow, but technically they'll hit our distributor in 4, 5, 6 days from now. But if a snowstorm hits, it might be 3 or 4 weeks from now. So we have to deal with those challenges as well. There is in my eyes, a successful brewery that started here in 2010 called Crazy Mountain. They moved down to Denver just for easier logistics. We want to be a mountain brand, or we're all very passionate about skiing. I can't see us doing anything different. My team asked us if we're ever going to move to Denver, and my reply, not a chance. We're here. We're going to deal with the logistics. We're learning about them. We know about them. This past holiday season, we kind of got screwed because of shipping logistics, but it's part of it, and we're learning, and so we go on. But this is our home. I love it here. Our whole team loves it here, and so we just have to deal with the logistical challenges that come with it. And maybe there's some of those logistical challenges that come with it in a big city as well, but it's just part of it. So
I have to tell you about my buddies up at Denali in Alaska that distill in northern Alaska. If you want to talk about logistical challenges,
absolutely.
Trucks won't deliver them their grain. They have to drive to go get it. It's 8 hours each way to bring their grain. I'm like, fuck that.
Right.
You got to be committed.
That's incredible, right?
Got to be committed, man.
And
Yeah.
it costs them $1,200 a pallet.
Exactly.
In shipping, and they have to drive 8 hours each way. Like, it cost me $60 to ship a pallet, and you're gonna pay $1,200,
right?
And drive 8 hours each way.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. Changes the game, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely does, Steve.
Yeah. So Jason had a question, and we'll just throw it out to all the group because they're all the same in that they're not Kentucky distilleries. So he's asking, do you feel like as a craft to stand out, you have to do something unique, something different, create some sort of niche, or do you feel like, you're already a little bit different anyway because you're not a Kentucky bourbon. You just go out and make the best products that you can, and that's how you stand out.
I'll jump at this one if you guys don't mind.
Yeah. Go
I
ahead.
think the public's palate has been educated for the last X amount of years to really love a bourbon from Kentucky, an American whiskey, etc. And I think it's important to not provide, like Paul was saying, we're not making Kentucky bourbon, but we're making a damn good bourbon. And so from our 10th Mountains position, we're making some good bourbon. Yeah, it's not Kentucky, but we also have a couple of things lying down. Again, one we're going to launch in April, one we're going to launch in July, and then we have a couple other experiments lying down to see how those mature. So I think it's important from a craft brand to be able to experiment with a handful of barrels, but certainly offer something to the general public that's going to appeal to their palate. It's not a Kentucky bourbon, but it's still going to appeal to the palate on some level. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'd agree. I'd say it a little bit differently, but I do agree with him. Just, my phrasing's always gonna be different than his, and that's the joy of it.
Right.
And to me, just, first thing, you got to make great whiskey. If you don't make great whiskey, you're out. And, in some ways that's better because you can go on and do something better with your life than end up making whiskey. But end of the day, you have to make whiskey that's great whiskey. It has to be different. But if it's just simply a gimmick, no one's going to come back to it. It's relatively easy to sell the first bottle of whiskey to somebody. It's relatively simple. It's an awful lot harder to sell that third, fourth, and 10th bottle.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
we're in the business of selling that 10th bottle.
10th bottle. Yeah.
And so if it's just the kind of thing where you're trying to only appeal to whiskey geeks, it's really tough because whiskey geeks want to try everything. They go, they try it, they take a sip, or they go, you go to Whiskey Fest, you take a sip of a whiskey, you come and do a Zoom event on the ABV network, you take a sip of a whiskey. Oh yeah, okay, I tried that. That was cool. That was great. And you never go back and buy it because, okay, whatever, it was really cool, but I don't want to drink that. It's relatively easy to do that because you can make really weird and wacky whiskeys. Lord knows I've done that in the past.
Mhm.
And we'll continue to do that in the future because it's fun and I like to do it. But it's really tough to have a business doing that because then nobody buys your products. And
Yep.
so it's, the unspoken secret that everybody's ashamed of it except for me. But, when you're making whiskey, it is actually a business. This is how I pay my staff. It's how I pay the rent. It's how I buy more grain. It's how I buy more barrels. It's how I feed my kids. If you just make something because it's cool, yeah, that's fun. But you got to make something that somebody will come back to time and time again.
Yep.
and to Paul's point, the label sells it once, the flavor sells it twice.
So, again, we say the same thing, we just say it differently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Absolutely. Yeah.
Got time for one more question. If anybody's got one last question, again, I'll stick around. But we want to, let our guests go. So if anybody's got one last question, feel free to jump in now.
Can I ask one? It was about the water. I sort of wanted to hear from everybody, but we're going to be out of time. So
No, yeah, everyone can weigh in on it, Ed. We got just enough time for that. So
I mean, well, everybody stressed it, but Lisa just kept saying the flavors, the Widow Jane flavors pop. I've had a bunch of Widow Jane things. They have different flavors to me, honestly. I actually just bought a bottle of your 15-year-old Vault one today. So I haven't tried that yet because, well, I was at work. My wife bought it for me. So it met me when I came home. But so what flavors do y'all feel that your water does bring out, like, specifically?
In our whiskeys in the flagship, it's certainly the dark stone fruit and the baking spice. In our ryes, it tends to make the ryes softer and sweeter. I love rye whiskey, so even big spicy ryes, but ours are really approachable and pretty soft and pretty sweet. And it's interesting what it does to tame the rye. You know, it takes away any of the green grassiness. You know, we end up with these really mellow, very, very drinkable ryes because of it. Yeah, it's crazy. You know, I kind of talked about that, and maybe I've talked to, because I talk too fast sometimes. Take some of the very famous French mineral water, let it go flat, and find a cask strength whiskey and experiment with it. We don't have a cask strength whiskey, so you have to buy somebody else's, but like play with it with the different waters. Try some distilled water from the grocery store, try some tap water, try some flat mineral water, and cut your whiskey, that cask strength whiskey with it. You'll be surprised how different the notes will be.
That's a good science project.
Don't do distilled water though. It just makes the whiskey flat and lifeless, I think.
Mhm.
Well, I have that.
So try it for
water.
try it for yourself though. I mean, again,
Right.
play with it. Why not?
Yeah, it's a
Like
fun
water-
experiment.
It's science. Okay,
it's a fun
we'll do an
thing.
event like that. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
whiskey, bunch of different types of water. See which one's best.
I mean, this is beyond the scope of this probably, and you can't answer in the 30 seconds we have. but why? I mean, why do those minerals interact and give that change in the flavor characteristic?
I don't know. I don't know. Ask me again in a year, because you know, I've really, like I said, I hired some water engineers. I've torn the thing apart, and knowing, like I said, knowing that one of these days the TTB is going to require me to ingredient label. And so I wanted to be sure that I had everything that I needed before that happened. But yeah, it's fascinating, you know?
There's an awful lot to it. I mean, Lisa's primarily talking about proofing water.
Yes.
But there's more water involved in making whiskey than just a proofing water. To get your mash water, depending on how you're charging your stills, maybe you're putting water in, maybe you're not putting water in when you're charging your stills, depending again how are you making your whiskey, and all of those chemicals and minerals and substances that are in the water make a difference, and you can taste the difference. In particular, when you're mixing water and whiskey. It's a chemical reaction. The various minerals are going to react with various congeners and esters, and as well as, of course, the ethanol and any other of the higher or lower alcohols that are sitting in your whiskey. All of these things are going to be reacting in the bottle. It's all going to matter. The question, shouldn't you use the same water? Well, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. Again, it depends. But realistically, you don't have to.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, Paul reeled me back in there. On mashing water, that's the thing that's with Widow Jane. Actually, the water that we used to proof would be spectacular mashing water, because all that calcium and the magnesium in it makes really healthy fermentations. And that's the reason people early Pennsylvania, the limestone water, Pennsylvania, upstate New York, Kentucky. I mean, that's the reason people sought out that water, because if there's the absence of iron makes whiskey black. Oh.
There's a lot of science here that gets glossed over because, quite frankly, it's somewhat boring to an awful lot of people. But it's really just assholes like me that go, "Ooh, fucking water! Ooh, tell me more."
I don't know. With this group, we're whiskey
I love
geeks.
the science. I went to MIT and I'm a science person, so I've heard a lot of people talk about their water, and people started talking about, iron's bad and all that kind of thing. But it's hard to get. Well, I know nobody really understands what exactly flavors it brings out and how exactly it goes about it. Although, I mean, we've got the Beam Institute right here that's going to be working on some of that stuff, I think. But
there's a great book on water in brewing that is relatively accessible for the somebody who's at least mildly scientifically oriented, which is, I would probably describe myself that way, and certainly I'd probably describe you that way. It's a relatively comprehensible and easy to read book addressing a very, very complex subject. Now, it's water for brewing, it's not water for distilling, so it's not exactly a one-to-one, but I'm not aware of anybody that's written the book on water and distilling. But maybe that's Lisa's next job. I don't know.
No,
it's not my job. I'm not doing that.
I'm going to pick David's brain is what I'm going to do.
I'm going to chime
not
in
doing
just for a second. I'm not much of a
jump in type of person. But one thing people have to understand about water, water is a universal solvent. Whatever it touches, it picks part of that up. So it's not what water adds to your spirit, it's what it absorbs from your spirit.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay, and it's minute. Also, a lot of guys are proofing with RO water, and RO water, because you're stripping it out through osmosis, makes it a very aggressive water. Not quite as aggressive as DI. I mean, I've made 18 megohm water, which is the purest water on the face of the earth.
Non-conductive.
Non-conductive, and our party trick was to take an extension cord and cut it off, strip it, put one in a plastic bowl, hold on to the other one, and put your finger in the bowl. You would not get shocked. Then usually the quarterback type guy would come over and say, let me do it. Well, my finger leached just enough salt out of my skin to make that water now have conductivity. And they would get a tingle. So, it's just stupid stuff like that.
Cool. All right. Well, the witching hour is here. We like to say that we do keep on track. We like to respect the individuals that come on here by not keeping them for hours and hours, even though we'd like to, because we always have a lot of questions. But we'll wrap this one up by thanking our guests. All of them did a great job today, so appreciate that. Thanks so much for joining us. Paul on vacation and everything. That's great. So appreciate everyone coming out and being part of this. I will be emailing everyone tonight. I'll upload the video. I'll send a link to that in case you missed any of tonight's presentation. And of course, for the individuals that don't do it as well, I'll also include the link for the events that are coming up in May. So again, I would anticipate a sellout. If you like these classes, you like being part of these events, I would go ahead and get your ticket now, as it will be sold out long before the event comes around. Like I said, March is already sold out. If you're looking to get in on that one, that is gone. We're actually in an oversell situation. We've got someone who's begging for a ticket. So Justine and I are going to take half pours to get one last ticket in. From our buddy Lenny at Deerhammer wants to be part of it. So we're going to help him out, but we don't have any more whiskey. So that's all we can do. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recorder. Say goodbye to our audience here, and anybody who wants to stick around, feel free to do so. Thanks a lot for being part of this. All right, that was great.